Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly SAIL College and Career Workshop. My name is Megan. I'm the program manager for the Summer Academy to Inspire Learning, or the SAIL program, and we're based out of the University of Oregon here in Eugene. So welcome from wherever you might be watching right now, or maybe you're watching the recorded version. So I hope everyone's having a great day. Today is our final college and career workshop for this term. So if you've been joining us for the past couple terms, thanks for popping back in. And we really wanted to share something extra fun for you today to wrap up our term. So my question for you today, have you ever wished that you could time travel? Because I know that that's something I think about a lot. So today we have a panel of guests with us who will talk about a really unique way of learning about history that sounds to me a little bit like time travel in that you get to really embed yourself in a specific time period and really think about what that would have been like. And of course you get to have fun and you're earning college credit the whole time. So if you're thinking about college, maybe curious about what kinds of unique experiences you might be able to have here, I think this presentation will really speak to a lot of those things for you. And just housekeeping items before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we do these presentations for you, for the high school students or middle school students. So if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a little chat area off to your right, I believe. Please feel free to put questions there at any point. You're not interrupting us if you put questions in. And we will gather all of those together and we will ask them of our panelists towards the end. So we love hearing questions from you. So go ahead and pop those in there if you want to know anything more that we don't cover. So without any further ado, I wanted to give us an overview of what this program looks like, and then we'll dive in with our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and share a video here that will tell us a little bit more about this program, which is called Reacting to the Past. All right.
RTTP is Reacting to the Past. It's a role-playing game that sets students within a historical moment and asks them to play out that historical moment with the idea of getting them to work on both rhetorical skills and also to learn more about a historical event by trying to relive it.
Hello, fellow Pennsylvanians.
I noticed that Benjamin Franklin and the British major, they might have been a slight disrespective to TD.
Trusting her with guns and ammo is the quickest way to peace between us, but that draws upon the ire of Benjamin Franklin and the British major.
Should they deny us the land, we have options.
As a Quaker purist, I am against all war. I'm a peaceful gentleman.
We've done all this work and there's been so much bloodshed already, but honestly, this is the only way to end the war. And if they refuse us the land, then they're asking for it.
As such, I believe we need to renegotiate this claim because it is not acceptable to us.
I'm just here to get peace, trade, and good business.
I think it's a unique educational experience. It works very, very differently than most classes, especially history classes.
As a student in the class, I thought it was a really fun break in my week almost, a way to be engaged and be present in the course and interact with other students a lot in an academic setting, but also kind of in a more dynamic academic setting.
It connects you more with what's happening today. I mean, for example, just with what's going on at Standing Rock right now, that taking a class on Cherokee removal and having to be put in that position and make those kind of hard decisions, and that it can help you work through feelings and decisions that you should make about what's happening in today's society and how you can take what you've learned and make a beneficial impact on the world.
We're only going to watch it once. All right, so is your interest piqued? I think mine certainly is. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Kevin Hatfield, who is going to give us just a little bit of an overview of what Reacting to the Past is, how it fits into classes at the University of Oregon, and a little bit about the current programs that our student panelists are going to talk about. So Kevin, take it away, please.
Megan, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having us here today to talk about reacting to the past. We're really excited to be here. I'll just share a little bit about what is reacting to the past. The video provided kind of a preview. At the essence, they're role-playing games that are very elaborate role-playing games, and they last anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks. And it's an exciting curriculum that started almost 20 years ago. There are over 300 games at this point that are taught nationally. And at the University of Oregon, we have a cohort of about 30 faculty that have been trained in reacting to the past to offer these courses. And we offer lots of different games at the U of O. And so today we're going to talk about the 2 games that we are playing this term. One is called Forest Diplomacy. The other is called Red Clay. And they're games that are built around treaty council sessions. One is set in kind of the British colonial period in Pennsylvania with the Lenape and Haudenosaunee tribes. And then the one we're currently ending, we just ended yesterday, is dealing in 1835 with Cherokee removal. But there are games really in the sciences. There's like a Trial of Galileo game. There's a game set in Greenwich Village in the Progressive Era with anarchists and labor radicals and Emma Goldman. There's games set in ancient Athens. So they're really games in almost any topic you can think of in history. And the thing that's really exciting about the Reacting to the Past curriculum is they're not scripted performances. So in other words, students aren't memorizing lines. So it's not quite acting, it's not quite debate class, it's not quite mock trial, but it's kind of a combination of a lot of different things. And every student, and you're going to meet our students and our kind of undergraduate peer leader today, but every student has a role that they inhabit or they enact. And that role kind of tells you who you are, what your beliefs are, what actions you want to take, and what your victory objectives are for kind of winning the game as your own role, but as part of a group, as part of a larger faction. And these roles are based on real historical actors, so real people who lived in the past. So you can actually go and do additional research on them as you're thinking how you want to develop your strategy and play the game. And the thing that I really enjoy about the game is that they're meant to help you really develop a sense of empathy or greater understanding for the historical actors that you're trying to learn more about, because you really start to get a sense of just the challenging decision-making, the challenging situations that these historical actors found themselves in. And so it's really fun because unlike reading a textbook where it can seem very lineal, A cause B cause C, in these games, we're working with the what if questions. What if it had played out in a different way? As long as it's still, intellectually sound, our games can actually have counterfactual conclusions. In other words, it can have an outcome that's slightly different than what actually happened in the past. And I think that's where it really becomes exciting for students, because it is a different way of what are the decisions, what are the issues we're wrestling with, and how could history have turned out potentially differently than it did. So I want to turn things over again. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Kevin Hatfield, and I'm a faculty member with the History Department and the Robert D. Clark Honors College. But I want to turn it over to our wonderful students and our student preceptor, as we call them in Reacting to the Past, which is a student who's played the games and is then coming back as kind of a peer mentor to help coach and guide them as they're taking these roles. It can be a bit disorienting at first when you're kind of immersing yourselves in these role-playing games. So I'm going to allow our panelists to kind of introduce themselves, and they're going to share a little bit about what characters they played, what some of the interesting strategies or tactics had. These games have a lot of interesting elements, from assassinations to bribery to impeachments to lots of secret deals. So they can get pretty competitive and they can get pretty exciting. My colleague Alex Strackleby, who you saw in that intro piece, he teaches the French Revolution game, game, and they had to institute a no chair throwing policy in his class because the French Revolution was just getting a little too intense in the classroom. So and so it can get a lot of fun, but it can also get pretty competitive. So I'm going to open it up to our wonderful students that are with us today. Issa, maybe if you want to start out as somebody who's been in the games and also coming back. So.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Issa, and I am the aforementioned preceptor. I first played the games last year in winter of 2020, and I came back this year to help teach the class with Kevin, the class that Carmen and Nathaniel are in right now. And my class also played the two games that we're going to be talking about. And this time around, just kind of got to help people figure out what they wanted to be doing in the games and how, they figuring out if things are historically sound, or if, like Carmen asked me kind of on accident if she could start a civil war. But yeah, things like that, just helping, students kind of play within their roles and things like that. But I guess I didn't really introduce myself. I'm a biochemistry major. I'm a senior. And history has always been it's been one of my weakest subjects. Like, it never really clicked for me. And so when I played these games for the first time, I really felt like I got it. Like, being in history for me helped me feel like it made so much more sense and that it actually stuck. So that's why I came back, because I had so much fun, and it helped me a lot. So yeah.
Thank you, Issa. Do we want to go Carmen and then Nathaniel?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen. I am a marine biology junior. And as Issa mentioned, these games were incredibly exciting. So kind of like that highlight of Nathaniel and I can get into a little bit more, but I played Andrew Jackson in our last game of Red Clay, and Nathaniel played Governor Lumpkin. And despite being in the same faction, I felt like we were butting heads a lot. He may have threatened to murder an entire group of people if he didn't get his way. And when I asked Issa, well, can I use the U.S. Army to kind of stop him from using the Georgian forces, she asked me, Carmen, do you really want to start a civil war? And I was like, well, when you put it that way, I guess that's different than when I thought about it in my head. So definitely crazy experiences. And I really selected this class because I think, as all of us have kind of had to go into virtual classes, just listening to lectures and taking notes aren't always the most stimulating, especially when you have a lot of things that are a little bit more fun around you. And so taking a class that would really require me to be on camera, to have my audio on, to be actively listening, and actively like writing notes about things that I need to talk about later on, was really something that drew me to take RTTP.
Yeah, I'm Nathaniel. I'm a political science major. I'm a junior. I want to officially go on record and say I officially apologize for threatening to murder everyone, and I did not go through with it. Just want to put that out there. But yeah, I was really drawn to this class. I mean, I first had some friends that took it and really enjoyed it, and I was also just naturally drawn to it because I just kind of live for this kind of role-playing, acting, getting very, very deep into characters and games and stuff. And this definitely scratched that itch. And it's just really, I mean, as Deason and Carmen and everyone else has mentioned, it's just a uniquely engaging way to get into this history, just a very specific moment, that might, get talked about for a little bit in a history class and then move on to the next event if you're just, popping through history. But, you're just diving really into this specific moment, getting to know people who you probably wouldn't remember. You'll remember like one or two people. If you just read a history textbook, you'd be like, oh, Red Clay, Andrew Jackson was involved in that, maybe John Ross, you'll know, and that's about it. But you'll get a lot more of a sense of, the dynamics between all the different people involved, because it's never just a simple interaction between like two people. even though, history classes moving quickly through it might present it that way. It's a dynamic, complex interaction between lots of people that could have gone lots of different ways. And you're just really, really invested in it, and how it's all going to play out. So it's just a really unique way to engage with history and historical figures.
Thanks everyone for chatting a little bit more about your experience. That's awesome. Well, I was going to do this in a little different order, but you all have me hooked now with hearing about these stories. So why don't we, would love it if in whatever order feels comfortable to everyone, would love to hear about what characters you played, and maybe for those of us who are rusty on their history, kind of what space in history they occupy. And then if they have like a group or a faction that they were associated with, talk a little bit about that. And then, since it's a game, what your objectives were, or kind of what you were working towards to kind of set the scene for us. You can just go in whatever order you want.
I can go first since I've gone through these games twice, so I think I remember a little bit more maybe. So when I first played the games last year, I enforced diplomacy, which is during 1757, I think that's the year. So that's during colonial time, so that we're not quite to the United States of America, but we're getting close because Benjamin Franklin is there and he's still very upset about everything. But I was playing TDS Skung, which is a Lenape, or the kind of European name for the Lenape is the Delaware, which is like Delaware State. He is a war chief, and he was kind of a pretty selfish dude. He kind of saw this opportunity to kind of instantiate himself in the sort of hierarchy of the treaty making that was going on at the time. And part of the culture that you learn is that because he couldn't get any more sort of powerful than a war chief within his own tribe, because the Lenape are a matrilineal culture, and so you have to be born by certain women to be in a chiefdom line, so that he kind of saw his opportunity to take advantage of the treaty making to get himself a little bit more powerful. So I had weird victory objectives that were kind of strange, like get the treaty to mention you as King of the Delaware, which is just because he's kind of conceited. And then there was some other things that like there's another tribe called the Iroquois, and they were trying to kind of take possession over the Lenape in a way and kind of have them be like their children, which was not how it really was. And so one of the things I had to do is make sure that the Pennsylvanians recognize us as distinct groups, things like that. And part of my strategy for that was making sure that none of my faction was ever away from me so that they could plot secret plans against me by being like really overly controlling and watching everyone all the time, because I knew that if I wasn't watching, someone was probably going to try to take over my position. And yeah, it worked out. It was pretty great. I guess Red Clay. My role in Red Clay wasn't quite as big. I was kind of just like a grimy little snobbish rich person who took money from Governor Lumpkin, who Nathaniel played this time. And that was basically all I did. I just like used other people to carry my messages so that I could never be found out. But I'll let him talk about that more with his role. So yeah, that's what I did.
Since I feel like we've had a little bit of established order, maybe I'll just sneak in second. Sorry, Nathaniel, but so for Forest Diplomacy, I played Richard Peters, who was part of the Pennsylvanian faction, and more specifically the Proprietary. And the Proprietary were really historically, William Penn and his family were the ones who created the colony of Pennsylvania, and they were the ones who had land ownership from the king. And so when his family went back to England, we were kind of set in charge to be like, make sure everything's running smooth. This is my property still, but I'm all the way across the ocean. Don't mess this up. So our whole faction was really focused on making sure that we remained in power, that we weren't giving too much land away. And that was our big focus. As Richard Peters, I didn't have too much control, like on paper. The lieutenant governor, who was the one who was leading the treaty proceedings and really taking charge of everything, was who really had the power. But I liked that my role kind of involved me poking and prodding him, whispering in his ear a lot, being like, you should do this because we don't like this person because I heard this secret. So it's a little bit more like maybe puppet master was kind of how I like to play it, or like sniveling little like assistant who surprise has more power than you think. And so, yeah, a lot of my role involved making sure that the proprietary looked good. And I was the main writer of the treaty. So I think the document ended up being around 10 pages of listing out exactly what happened. And what's really interesting is that treaties at the time don't really look like a treaty now, which would be like, oh, we agree to this point and that point and this point, and you're going to do this for us. Treaties back in the 1700s were, and TDS gun said this. And in response, the lieutenant governor said this. And so it's actually much more a transcript. So I was very quickly trying to like write everyone out. So I apologize to Kevin for having to read 10 pages, but there was a lot of talking. And so, yeah, a lot of my role was making sure, oh, you know, you have land in this area, make sure that the Iroquois give that up, and make sure the Iroquois have dominance over the Delaware because we work better with the Iroquois and it'll perform better. We'll have more power if we work with them. So that was my role as Richard Peters. And then going into Red Clay, I was Andrew Jackson. I don't think he needs too much introduction, but President of the United States at the time, infamous for the Trail of Tears. And in this role, I really had to grapple with, because Richard Peters, pretty unknown, you know, I don't know him in real history, so I really could just get it really into his character and really see myself as him, which I thought was so surprising how much I felt like I was Richard Peters. But as Andrew Jackson, I really had to step away and be like, I know all of the horrendous things that this man has done, and I have to try to come to this agreement that I'm going to play him as accurately as possible. But I still feel really, you know, I get my toes start to curl when I think about having to force these people off their land that Carmen knows is wrong. I know what happens if we do that. And so it was so interesting to try to like push those things together. So Andrew Jackson is actually kind of sitting off a days away in my tent. Out of character too much, I was listening to Home on the Range a lot, just imagining that I was in the forest, hanging out, waiting for my my main man, John, to come bring messages to me. And at the end of it all, it really was, you know, the Cherokee were the ones who were really coming up with the treaty. And it was kind of my rubber stamp at the end being like, I agree with this. And I like to think that we came to a good compromise. I don't know if, you know, Governor Lumpkin kind of messes with that at the end, but I like to think that we rewrote history in a way that, you know, Andrew Jackson and Carmen could come together and make an agreement to change history together. So those are my two roles.
Yeah. So my two roles, kind of an interesting third perspective on the forest diplomacy game. I was George Krogan, who was an Irish trader, and he was one of the three interpreters. And the interesting thing about forest diplomacy is that you have the Lenape and the Haudenosaunee tribes, and you have the Pennsylvanians, and they can't communicate directly with each other unless they're all at the Treaty Council and the interpreters are there. But during these sessions, when they're working, you know, separately, we interpreters have to shuttle back and forth and deliver messages and communicate and broker meetings and agreements. So, I mean, there's a lot of power and influence you have in that particular role. And a lot of leeway too. With George Krogan, his whole deal was, I mean, he's a businessman essentially, and he's fallen on hard times financially. He owes pretty much everyone money, and he's just kind of trying to slither his way into success one way or another. And he's got multiple ways to do that. As Issa said in our tutorial meeting, you're a snake. And you just got to roll with that. And I did, and I enjoyed being snaky. and I mean, just
imagine
kind
like
of,
the slimiest person you've ever met, and that's what George Krogan is. Like he's just gross. Like
he's just
that's
trying
all
to
you
be
need to know.
successful, you know? He's just just trying to make his way in the world, you know? But I mean, yeah, just siding with different side. I mean, I kind of sided with the Iroquois and then sort of brokered agreements with the Pennsylvanians. Did not like T.D. Uskung, and basically was trying the entire time to bring him down. I ended up orchestrating a vast conspiracy across factions, with which me and another interpreter would use our abilities to inebriate a member of the Lenape and get them to agree to something to which they would not normally agree. And there were some shenanigans that ensued there with immunity to that ability being shuffled around. And at the time, it was a very stressful time, I will admit, but it was, I mean, incredibly engaging, and nothing I could really find a comparison to in the rest of my academic career. Just being able to create something like that, basically of your own volition, bring allies together and forge alliances and conspiracies and try to achieve your goals. And just having that, that initiative and that ability to control what you're going to do is it's very liberating, as opposed to just a lecture class. And then for Red Clay, which was the Cherokee Removal Council in 1835, I was Governor Lumpkin of Georgia, and he had some thoughts about the Cherokee. They were not particularly nice thoughts.
Racism.
Yeah. I was trying to be a little more diplomatic, but yes, he was an angry gentleman, and I embodied that somewhat. I mean, I tried to be somewhat diplomatic. I mean, he was very. I will say this to his credit. I mean, he was a very good writer. His speeches were very well written. So I tried to embody this kind of, this man who had very, very harsh beliefs, but, was also somewhat diplomatic. But early on, and this was alluded to earlier, the first Treaty Council session was rather hostile on all sides, and it began to be discussed to just cut me and my state out of the deal. And Lumpkin, as Lumpkin in character, was furious about this, and me out of character was like terrified that I was just gonna lose everything and all my influence. So I ended up, after class ended, composing like a 600-word email, in which I essentially threatened to kill everyone, including the president. Basically, I threatened just saying, my state will not stand for this. You've already got a state turned against you with the nullification crisis a few years earlier, So yeah, I just basically threatened everyone and sent it to everyone at the council. And I did eventually apologize for it, that say, okay, I may have gone a bit too far into some places, but it was very interesting to ride that wave of the character's anger. And then, yeah, as Issa alluded to, I had some bribe money that I was trying to spread around and influence things to achieve my goals, which was interesting, because I mean, officially I didn't have any actual power, because it was the Cherokee National Council, which I was not a member of. I was the governor of Georgia. I was there, I was present, but I wasn't necessarily actively participating in negotiations. And the white faction, which is pretty much just comprised of 3 people, are just kind of disparate, not really working together. Andrew Jackson and I didn't quite get along, and he wasn't even in the same place. So I mean, a lot of my stuff occurred out of class. Like in class, I was just kind of sitting alone, waiting, hoping for people to come talk to me. But then like out of class, I was, trying to forge these alliances and corrupt bargains, as it were, which it's very interesting.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's a really great segue into the next question I wanted to ask. So thanks, Nathaniel. One of the things I'm really enjoying about this conversation is clearly all of you have a great rapport and have worked together and have really formed a community. So maybe we can start with Issa, and if anyone else wants to pop in, they can. But often something our incoming students worry about is if they're going to find friends. Are they going to find their people? And would love to hear about how this format kind of does it build community? How does that work with some of these out of class experiences? How do people come together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I went to high school in South Eugene High School, which some of you out there might be like, woo, but yeah, go South. And then I came to the U of O, so my mom like lives 3 miles away. So it's like I didn't travel very far for college, but a lot of my friends from high school ended up going to different states for college. And so when I came to college, I was like, oh, actually, this is the first, like, I really anticipate that I would be making new friends as much. And as a first year college student too, I was very like not aware of how everything worked and what was going on. And but yeah, I mean, almost instantly, and I feel like especially in this class, like during college, you really get an opportunity to see your classmates and other people like really show how smart they are and how caring they are. And I think that most of us can agree the foundation of a good friendship is like admiration of a person, and being able to see people's like rhetorical skills or their creativity or their just straight up knowledge of bamboozling everyone in the class. I think that's foundations of some really good friendships. I still talk to a few people from RTTP and from my class, and obviously I talk to some of these guys like every other day. I get messages from people asking me questions and laugh about stuff during office hours. But yeah, no, I think that you'd be surprised that when you come to college, you're like, oh, everybody already has friends. Like, no one has friends. You all are making friends together. Everyone is a little bit more similar than you think, and college is fun. It's hard, but it's also very fun. It's more fun than it is hard, I think.
And I would like to start my little response saying that there is one downside that RTTP brings to the table when it comes to making friends. If I look on my phone right now, I have 3 or 4 people named Lieutenant Governor, Surveyor General, and like TDS Gun. And I know their real names if I look it up. I don't know their real names just off the top of my head. So I'd say the one problem is that you get so in character that you kind of forget that they're like not actually Lieutenant Governor, which makes interacting very interesting, especially even when you go into a next game and you're like, why am I getting a message from Lieutenant Governor? Who even is that? Oh, no. Now he's this person. I got to remember even that. So that's the one big downside, is just suddenly being like, I don't know your real name. But I definitely think that in comparison to a normal lecture class where you're in a class with, say, even especially as a freshman, 100 plus people, 200 people in a class, and you know the person who happens to sit next to you the first day, and you're like, I guess you're my friend now. Having a class of about 25 is so different. You know everyone, you recognize everyone, and like seeing them on campus, or so even if you're not, don't build a relationship right away, seeing them on campus and saying hey and building that rapport there, or really getting to know them in the class and being friends there. And I think also this kind of format's really fun for friends too. If you make friends like in your dorms and you happen to all be like, let's do this class together, because Nathaniel and I are friends, and there's another person, our friend Aubrey, who's also in this class, who we're friends with. And it's actually so much fun to step away from the games and like afterwards and be like, oh my gosh, tell me everything. And we're chatting late into the night. It's like 2 a.m. talking about these games. And that even like helps build relationships. If you're like, oh, we're only kind of friends, and then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, tell me everything you did, because I'm blown away by that speech you gave. Like, give me more details. So it helps foster them and also really strengthen your relationships, which I really, really appreciate from this format.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of spinning off of Carmen said, yeah, we've been friends since like freshman year, and it's been really interesting to go forward like that through class, especially classes in this environment. And I mean, even if it's interesting because you can end up in positions where you're completely opposed to your friends' characters, which I mean is sort of worrying at first, because you're being because you're like fighting them every day. But I mean, it also, helps to sort of develop that relationship, as Carmen mentioned. Like the other friend we mentioned, like me and her just like set up I mean, we just kind of had this running like subplot. Our characters were like morally opposed during this debate, and we were just kind of throwing barbs back at each other like during the debate, trying to bring each other down. And it was just a really good experience, and it really does, you know, deepen those friendships you had. And I mean, if you're I wouldn't say don't be concerned about making friends. I mean, it is something you have to, you know, go out and, you know, make that effort to do, but it will happen. You know, it will fall into place in, you know, places you wouldn't expect it to. You know, I mean, just someone like Carmen, we were just living on the same floor for, I mean, like a term or two, and we never really talked to each other, and then we just kind of just sort of did. So I mean, it will happen. You will find your people. It may seem daunting at first, and you're going to need to, you know, put yourself out there a little bit, but it will occur, and you will, you know, form these relationships. So, you know, yeah, go.
I was just going to hop in and say, from an instructor perspective, I think back into the past, but there are other courses at the UVO that maybe have a similar format, in the sense that it's kind of a flipped classroom. So in other words, once the games begin, I kind of become the game master, and Isa is the preceptor. And so the students are literally running the class sessions. They know what the agenda is, they know what their roles are. And so we're kind of in the background, like maybe, you know, coaching gently, or, you know, passing secret notes to help people. But I think that also helps the students really bond, just because they're not kind of sitting back passively listening to me lecture or listening to me present. They're working together to like run a treaty council, to negotiate a deal, to be an interpreter moving back and forth. So they have to kind of work together, because the class sessions, they're running the class. And it's a lot of fun to watch them kind of really live up to that and thrive by doing that. And so I just know, whether it's at the upper division level where we teach RTTP, or whether it's at the first year students, first term on campus, that kind of subversion of the classroom, where the professor is up on the stage, it's the students kind of running the show, is a lot of fun, and I think builds those relationships.
Thanks for that perspective, Kevin. I think that's really helpful, and I think kind of feeds into what I wanted to touch on too. Is again, another question we get from a lot of students is, what can I work on now? Or what skills might I have or be building now that are going to help me in college? And so, Kevin, you touched on them a little bit, that there's a lot of this collaboration work, and you get to kind of drive your own experience. But I would love to hear your thoughts on what skills students could bring in, or maybe, since this is a unique format, what skills students might gain from this format that they could apply to the rest of their college journey.
Yeah, I'll throw out a couple ideas, and then I definitely, you know, defer to the students. I think one thing about RTTP is, I think students bring a lot of skills with them that they might not be thinking about consciously, like, oh, this will apply to reacting to the past. And so that's why I love having a role like Isa's as a preceptor, because students can understandably be a little hesitant at first. And in talking through with them, well, share us, what are some of the different ways that you've taught or you've learned history or other courses? And inevitably students will share these great examples of different types of formats they've had. And then we can tease out from that, well, that's great, because then, you know, you've got some experience with, you know, public speaking, or you've got some experience with debate, or you have some experience with doing research in primary sources. Like, it could be lots of different things that all apply here. And so I think some of the time it's really helping students see skills they already have, but maybe just thinking about a new way of how can I apply them, or how can they transfer into an environment that maybe I just wasn't connecting at first, which makes total sense because they haven't lived through that environment yet. So that's one thing I would say is I imagine you're all bringing amazing skills with you, and part of our role will help you kind of see yourself fully and how you can apply those to.
Yeah, and you know, kind of spinning off that, I mean, a lot of these reacting to the past kind of helps you, you know, flex muscles you didn't necessarily know you had, and like even the things you wouldn't necessarily apply in real life. Like I got to, you know, do a lot of, you know, deception and lying and stuff, which is not stuff I do on a regular basis. And I'm not saying that's necessarily something that, you know, I am encouraging you to do, but the point being, I mean, just really puts you in a unique position to really, I mean, apply skills, as Kevin mentioned, that, I mean, that you would not expect to ever use in a college class, and you may learn something about yourself in that sense. And something else that I wanted to mention is, I mean, the thing that kind of threw me off the most about college is how self-directed it was. I mean, when you go through high school, you got pretty much a guide for you all the way through. I mean, there's people, and not that there isn't a support network at university, because there is, but for a lot of it, you are left to your own devices. You have to, figure out what you're doing and what your plans are. And this is, a very interesting way to do that, because I mean, you can just kind of sit back and, let things come to you. And I mean, the game will proceed without you, but if you take that initiative and step forward, you can really shape the course of the game. And that's a really, good thing to practice in this, this environment that really does reward, self-directed stuff. And that doesn't mean you're working entirely by yourself. You got to communicate with other people, and I mean, and professors as well. I've emailed Kevin in the middle of the night several times over the course of this term, just figuring out, okay, can I do this? Is this allowed? Is all this, but I mean, it really helps you, sort of flex that, and, be able to take control of your own life, as it were, and apply it in a context that is not your own life, but something that you are still very invested in, and helps you, direct that.
And I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, along those same notes, is I think it's really common throughout primary school to kind of have an answer key, or to have a teacher who's telling you like, oh, this was the right answer, you got that right or wrong. And I think in college, as well as like, I know like adult life seems like forever away, it even seems like it for me too, is like, you're not always going to have an answer key, or there's not going to always be a simple answer to anything, or a professor or a boss who tells you, oh, this is what I need you to do and this is what you should do, and all that kind of stuff. And I think having a game where your professor is like, I'm just gonna be in the corner, I'll just be, if you need help, I'm here, but you're leading it, and you're the ones creating the answers to these really complex questions of how do we handle Cherokee sovereignty, and how do we handle two nations who are trying to survive and thrive in the 1800s. Like, those are questions that don't have a right or wrong answer. And so I think that this kind of class really lends itself to kind of showing off kind of like your stretching your critical thinking skills and your creativity in ways that a lot of other classes don't ask of you to do that. It's always like, oh, these are the answers, these are the questions, have fun on the exam. And it's very different, and I think it's more applicable to real life.
Just really quick, sorry, Issa, but like, that ability to work that out between yourself and come up with these, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. Like, we come up with things in these games that, Kevin told us, that's never happened before, and all the times we've played this game. So there's always, always space to, be coming up with new answers, and this really helps realize that.
Yeah, and I think going back to the ideas that we brought up about like real life sort of things and like what you can be bringing or doing now, I think one of the things about RTTP that's really, really kind of most reflected in real life is just your listening skills. Because, I mean, you can like listen to someone and like hear what they say and like kind of know what's going on, but RTTP kind of, it gives you the responsibility of listening and then thinking and then having to immediately respond. So, I mean, just for something that you can practice right now, and I think this is just like a good life advice, is just always act like the person that you're listening to knows something you don't know. Because if you pretend like they're about to tell you something critical, then you're going to be engaged. You're going to like be not bored because you're sitting there waiting for the next word. So just listening to the other people in your life, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, your guardians, everybody, your friends, just listening to people more deeply and more carefully, that's just going to be a skill that sends you so far in life, but also in RTTP as well. So that's my piece of advice for that.
Thank you all so much. time is just flying by. I'm really enjoying this. This is great. So I think for the rest of our time together, we'll bring Angel back on, and he's going to ask a question or two that would be relevant to our students. And then we'll wrap up with Kevin telling us a little bit about action steps or any more details to wrap us up. So I'm going to turn us over to Angel to come back on, ask us some student questions. Are you there, Angel?
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm not able to turn my camera on for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Angel. I'm a second year student at the University of Oregon, and I have been working with SAIL for about 2 years now. And just happy to have you on here. But we do have some questions for y'all that after hearing your experiences with reacting to the past. It sounds like a very fun experience, but like it's easy to share the good sides, but what are some of the challenges that y'all have faced with these classes and the courses, experiences, the assignments? Anything y'all want to share?
I'm gonna just pop in right now because I have something very, very exactly what this person wants to know. So Nathaniel alluded to this earlier, but there's a thing called the liquor card, which is kind of just a historical representation of how alcohol was used to basically take advantage of Native Americans for a lot of history. And when I was playing TDS Skunk, I had a speech that I spent probably like 6 hours writing. And I was so excited. It was so good. I was going to roast everyone. Everyone was going to just roasted on the floor, and they weren't going to know what to do with themselves. And I got to class, and the person who was playing George Krogan was like, oh, dang, immunity. You don't have immunity. You got the liquor card. I cried. I cried in front of everyone. I sobbed like a baby in front of my entire class as a 20-year-old 21, maybe I was 21. As a 21-year-old, I cried in front of my whole class because I was so sad. Sometimes, that's just like life though. Sometimes you work really hard and, you do your best, and that's what's important. And I still had my speech read. I didn't get to read it. Someone else read it for me because the way that it works is I basically like historically showed up drunk to a treaty council and was sitting there just like out of my mind, but I just didn't speak. That was how it worked. I wouldn't actually get drunk. But there's a lot of stress when you put a lot of work into things. That's just what you can study really hard for a test. You can put a lot of work into a speech, and it doesn't always go the way that you want it to. But if you put everything into it, then that's all you can do. And that's just life.
And a lot of it's just, rolling with the punches. It's something you're gonna have to do. On the flip side of that, I tried to do essentially the same thing, and apparently immunity tokens can be transferred, which I did not know, which ruined my plans in basically the opposite direction, which was a whole nother stressful thing. But you're gonna encounter that stuff. Even outside the context of this one class, obviously. And that's going to be kind of unavoidable. Things are going to come up, whether it's school things or life things that you're not going to be able to avoid. It's just a fact. And being able to roll with that, it may seem like sort of empty advice to be like, oh, just go with it, just keep going, but I truly have found that just continuing to persevere through that, things do get better. Maybe not in that realm. Maybe something does go wrong and your path is changed completely. But you'll find something else, and you'll keep going along a different path, and maybe that's even better for you than what was there before. And it's hard to swallow, because you are kind of on your own for a lot of it and having to deal with all this stuff that's completely unexpected. But it is ultimately, for every one of those, you get something like RTTP, where it just brings a whole new life to to education, you know, and it's the things like that that get you through. So, I mean, just, you know, you just gotta keep going. You know, that's really all I can say on that front. You know, it does work out in the end, I believe.
And then I think I didn't have any like moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I've just like lost the game. I can't believe that happened to me. But I feel like on a more like average level, like everyone has experienced this, of trying to work with someone and be like, okay, so we both agree we're gonna do this thing, right? And we're like both nodding our head. And then they go off and do whatever they want to do. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted you to do. I cannot believe you've done that. And suddenly you're trying to like work around that. And I think that's, you know, very applicable to your day-to-day life of being like, we're all going to do this thing. And then people are like, I'm going to do my whole other thing. Or they don't even do anything. And you're like, why aren't you helping with this group project? Or why did you decide to like delete all our slides and do a whole new presentation on a different subject? Like, why are you doing this? So I feel like it's very applicable trying to like figure out how to work with people that don't agree with you, that don't listen to what you want them to do. And so like really learning those like interpersonal skills that you're going to use for as long as you have to interact with any other one person. So I think that was definitely a hard thing to deal with. Like not everyone's actually my puppet. I can't actually make everyone do things the way I want them to do.
On the bright side though, I did get to talk about how I was silenced in my second speech. And that speech was also really good. So there's there's lemons and lemonade. You got to think about it like
that. Thanks everyone, and thanks Angel for popping in with a really good question, keeping it real, which I appreciate. Well, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for sharing your experience, and then I want to turn it back over to Kevin because he's going to tell you how to actually do it. So if you're really excited and you're fired up about this experience, let's talk about how to make it happen.
Happy to, Megan. Yeah. So there are a few different ways to either take an RTTP course at UVO or to get involved with RTTP. There's actually a student club because students had so much fun in the RTTP courses, they wanted to keep having fun after the course was over. And so students have actually created an RTTP group. But the most direct way for incoming students is every fall, we host 3 to 4 FIGs that are RTTP FIGs. In other words, one of the 3 courses that comprise the FIG is a Reacting to the Past course. And so the FIG has the 1 credit kind of college connection seminar, or where you'll meet with your faculty and your cohort. And then that 1 credit course that connects you to the 2 other 4 credit courses. And one of those is the Reacting to the Past course. And the other one is a course that will be thematically aligned. So for example, when my colleague and I, Jennifer O'Neill, instruct a version of the course we've been talking about today at the FIG level, students take Introduction to Native Studies in the Department of Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies with either Jennifer O'Neill or one of her colleagues. And then they are also taking the Reacting to the Past course concurrently. And so it's a wonderful way to be able to get kind of more content knowledge and more understanding of the issues that the games are really dealing with in that 4 credit Intro to Native Studies courses while also playing these games. And so we will offer 3 to 4 FIGs every fall. So be watching the kind of FIG announcements and the FIG page. They'll update what the fall FIGs are going to be. You'll be getting information about that. And they'll do a great job of pointing out which ones are they reacting to the past FIGs. We also offer Reacting to the Past through the history department. And so we offer it as a History 211 and a History 411. So if there's anyone who's an incoming, history minor or major, or someone who wants to take a history course to satisfy core education requirements at the UVO, that could be a course you could take, because the History 211 satisfies one of the social science core education requirements. And so you can do RTTP, you could get history credit if you're a history minor or major, and it can count towards your core ed requirements regardless of what major you may be, or even if you don't have a major yet, even if you're just exploring. There are the 2 other ways to find Reacting to the Past. There are some large lecture surveys that incorporate a Reacting to the Past game within a survey course. And this could be in biology, it could be in political science. What often happens is they'll use the discussion section as the time where the game is played. And so often there's a discussion section or a 50-minute once per week course where if you're in a larger survey course, you get together with 20 to 25 students once a week. And so sometimes there's a chance to play an RTTP game as part of kind of a larger survey course. And then the last way is what we just did this term, which is in the Robert D. Clark Honors College. We're increasingly incorporating reacting to the past. We've started at the colloquium level, which is just kind of their upper division, but we're thinking about ways that we can offer it in the Honors College for their first term seminar as well for incoming students. So lots of different ways to get involved, but most directly, I would say watch the FIG website, watch for those FIG announcements, and see which ones are going to be offered this fall. So.
Perfect. And Kevin was kind enough to send me some links. So if you look in the description of this YouTube video, you will see a link to the actual FIG programs that we're talking about. So if that's something that you want to keep an eye on, you can do that through that description. And we also put up the page, a more general reacting to the past page, right, Kevin, that kind of talks a little bit more about what the program is and the history.
Yeah, I thought some students may be interested. It's kind of their national website. So if you really want to get a sense of what are all the different games, and there's lots of really cool videos on their YouTube channel that show, again, games being played at different schools if you want to get a deeper sense of what it's like. And again, there's also the RTTP Club, and there are micro games that can be played that only take a couple hours as opposed to several weeks. And so there are lots of different opportunities. If you really want to get into the role-playing game community at the U of O, it's a great way to.
And I think the last plug for the SAIL program too is in the past we have had reacting to the past sections within the SAIL program. So there's an opportunity to get involved sometimes too through SAIL, and that's something we can share on our Instagram, or if we do it during some of our other programming, you can check that out on our website. So both of those links too are in the description of the YouTube link if you just want to keep in touch with us and see what we're up to, and if we come up with another collaboration like that. But I think that's what we have for today. So grateful to all of you for coming in and sharing your experiences and your great energy, and just so much fun. A great way to wrap up this term for us. So big round of applause for yourselves and for our students out there who are really thinking about college. It's an exciting time. So perfect. Well, I will see all of you later. And thank you so much again for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, y'all.